Are you a Black woman looking to identify your North Star on your healing journey, your exit journey from a toxic job? If so, this video is for you. My name is Marissa Price. I'm a Black woman social worker, writer, and healer. And I have the pleasure of speaking with Alisia Gill today, but I will pass it over to her to introduce herself.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Alisia Gill, and I am a career, I suppose, transition coach, but a career coach. I come at that from a number of ways. I'm a former chief people officer, meaning I ran HR for a bunch of organizations. I was the first chief people officer in New York City government, right? So I'm all about doing hard things. But
Wow.
right. Um, but I'm also an economist. So I think about people from the perspective of who they are, not just as employees, but really people who are trying to navigate this world. And I also
Mm.
think about it in terms of the workforce, people in the country, what's happening with our labor market so that we can bring them together. We are all working in the context of what is happening in the country's labor force or the labor force in the region where we live. So that's how it all comes together for me.
I love that. And yeah, I did not know that you were an economist. I have my background is in finance. I was working at the central bank of the U.S. for a little while. So yeah,
Oh, we
that's
have
so
to talk.
interesting.
I worked at the New York Fed for a while, so
Oh wow, it's at the St. Louis Fed.
it's a funny world.
Wow, wow, I love that. I love that. But I do want to ask you what following your North Star means to you, and how did you discover your own North Star on this journey that you've been on?
Yeah, good question. It was I didn't come across this very easily. There were scars around that.
Hmm.
But your North Star is the set of requirements that you have in order for you to live a life and have a career that gives you meaning, that helps you feel fulfilled, and
Mm.
that is supportive of your wellness. It's aspirational, as any star, North Star would be. It is a destination, and you spend your time trying to get there because it's the place where you can, once you arrive, look back and say, you know what? I don't regret how I live my life. I don't regret the work that I did, right?
Hmm.
And it's unique for all of us. The path we have to take is different, but let's be intentional about where we're trying to get to. So many of us just bounce around like tennis balls, or we don't bounce around, we go straight in the wrong direction. Right.
That's
So,
true. Hmm.
and we know people who do that.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's us. And people like that can really feel stuck
Yeah.
and and unfulfilled, and they can't even necessarily tell you why. Right? They can't necessarily tell you why, but they don't feel good in what they are doing. They are the people who have the Sunday night dreads because they know on Monday they have to do XYZ that they absolutely don't like. And in what I'm saying, I'm not even talking about how you get treated in the workplace. That's its own thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's its own non trivial own thing. I'm
Right.
talking about the career and jobs that are meant for you, given the set of requirements and standards that you took the time to establish for yourself. And I came at that because I used to be a person very focused on external validation, on Black excellence, on all of the things that would make people proud, the things that would be highly compensated, all of that stuff. So, I have 2 Ivy League degrees. I speak 3 languages, right? I'm capturing all the things. I'm winning, right? Capturing all
Mm-hmm.
the awards as you go. And I was in a situation where I worked for a company and I was considered, top talent, and I was proud to be top talent and all this stuff. And at one point, they say, "Okay, Lisa, you have to do job XYZ, right?" And at that time, you know, one of the heads of finance of the whole company This is a multinational company, was my sponsor. So I had every reason to
Mhm.
feel really good about myself and feel like I had a little bit of a swagger. Like I had every reason to feel that way, but I didn't. And this job that he wanted me to take, as soon as he was describing it, I said, "Oh no, this is not me. This is not me." And what
Yeah.
can happen to a lot of us when we know there is something that is not for us, we think, "Well, let me just push through." Right? Or
Mhm.
maybe it's just nervousness, or maybe it's self-confidence or something like that. Everyone's telling me I can do it. I'm smart, right? Not that anything I'm saying has to do with intelligence, but we tell ourselves that, right? And that's an
Mhm.
excuse for staying where we know we're not meant to be. And so I did this job because I was not in the business of saying no. I was in the business of, if you asked me to jump and you said, I would say how high. That I was in the business of that.
Mhm.
If the person who told me to jump, was in a prestigious position or had promotion to offer me or something like that. If I cared about what that person actually thought, I would certainly say how high and I would certainly try to jump. Okay.
Mhm.
But the issue was that the job was really ill suited for me. I wasn't set up for success. It was very toxic for me, but that wasn't the big thing. The things that that job required, the things that that job was primarily about, the way that I would spend my time, the environment that I was in, it wasn't right. And I
Mhm.
didn't have the confidence. I was mostly living in fear at that point, and panic maybe is a word. Um,
Mhm.
and I worked and I kept thinking I could work my way through it. I could just work. I've always done it. I'm a smart person. I'll just keep working harder. And I got
Yes.
to the point where I'm there. It's the middle of the night. I mean, it's ridiculous. I always joke, I knew all the people, all the cleaning people in the building, and they were very nice people and good for them.
Mhm.
But the point is, why do I know them?
Mhm.
Right? I shouldn't have been there in the first place, right?
Right.
It's not making sense, right? It's not making sense. And at a certain point, I just said, you know what? I am literally driving myself crazy. I am literally doing that. So I called
Mhm.
HR and I said, I just cried uncle. And I went on a leave of absence because I just couldn't do it one more day. Because it
Mhm.
became very clear to me that working harder at it, talking to my mentors about it and getting support on it, and yeah, you can do it, like all of this stuff, it's not what it was about. It wasn't me. So I took that time, and at the time I wasn't calling it the North Star, but
Mhm.
it was. And it was the time that I took to say, all right, Alicia, what are you really about? Really? We got this one life that we're living here. What do
Mhm.
you want to make of it? How do you want to show up in the world? What are the requirements that you have for yourself to show up the way that you want to show up? And what are you going to accept and not accept to live the life and have the career that you deserve? And it is possible for that to be true. So
Mm.
when I went back to work, I basically said, "Oh, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. Here are my requirements." Now, I didn't say it like that. But basically, I t- what I did was I basically defined my North Star, and I did it
Mm.
with confidence. This is what it is. You guys know I'm amazing. I'm amazing. So let's the smart thing for all of us to do is put me in a spot where it's going to work for everybody and we all going to win. That's what we need to do. And they kind of went, "Oh." And so what happened was my next job met all of those requirements. All of them, right? Because the power of the North Star is you can confidently articulate what it is because it's you. It's you, and nobody
Mhm.
can call you wrong for being yourself.
Mhm.
And if somebody believes in you and wants you to do well, and you articulate what you need to do well and be your best self, they're crazy not to create those conditions for you. They're crazy not to. Smart leaders don't do that.
Mhm.
Smart leaders recognize people who say, "Here are my requirements." They respect that because that's what they do. right? That's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So, in any case, I have found that having identified my North Star and told, having told people about it in the right situations, not bragging about in every situation, here's my North Star, right? We're not talking about that. But in instances where it makes sense, I certainly do speak eloquently, I'd like to believe, about what my North Star is. And
Yeah.
ever since I've done it, there hasn't been a job that I have taken that is not aligned with it. Not one. And I'm a
Wow.
person who, yeah, I am living a life of joy and meaning. My part of my North Star is doing what I'm doing right now, right? It gives
Mm-hmm.
me tremendous meaning to have an opportunity to influence people's lives so that they can live a life they love, where
Mm-hmm.
they can look back and I said and have no regrets and say, I did what I wanted to do, or I worked hard to get to what I wanted to do, right? Not,
Mm-hmm.
well, I kept getting promoted, right? Like, to me, that's sad, right? At one point at the end of my mom's life, she was in a nursing home, and I would look and I would go up and down the hallway, and the residents were so lovely. And I sat there and I thought to myself, everyone here has a story, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
putting them in their bed in their bed, or I'm looking at them in the chair, or what, but they all have stories. And I always wonder how many of them had regrets if you spent the time to really talk to them. How many
Right.
people would say, I did what I meant, what I was meant to do, or they say, I had good benefits and compensation, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what I did, and I kind of feel like there's a little bit of a sadness in that,
Mm-hmm.
because we can all play a bigger game. And when I say a bigger game, I don't mean a success game. I don't mean an external validation game. I'm talking about an internal validation game. Did you make
Mm-hmm.
yourself happy? Not did you impress Jane, right? It's not about, I don't care about Jane. I'm not going to be sitting in the nursing home talking about how I impressed Jane. All right. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to be talking and thinking about, did I show up in the world in a way that mattered to me, that gave me joy, that enabled me to use the best that I have to give, that met the requirements I need in terms of my values and what I will accept in terms of how people treat me and what I require for people to treat me in my life. That's what I'm going to be
Mm-hmm.
thinking about. And all kind of the things I'm giving you nuggets about are the way that you start thinking about and defining your personal North Star.
I love that. And you said so many things. The first, I think, is the validation piece. That's something that I'm still unlearning as a lifelong overachiever, right? Placing
Mhm.
my validation in other people's hands.
Yeah.
And I think you said something about constantly like being the top performer at all of your jobs. That resonated deeply.
Yeah.
And so, for those of us who feel like we're still in that trap of seeking external validation, what advice do you have? Like, how were you able to move out of that and come into internal validation, which is permanent? Any tips you'd like to share?
Yeah. Well, I think it's easier to to start first with, am I doing this thing to impress somebody? Am I doing this thing because somebody said I should? Am I doing this thing because it's impressive? Am I doing these things? Pick all the things that don't have to do with you and ask yourself if that is the reason that you are doing it. So, for example, when you're an classic overachiever, um, you graduate from college, and so you graduate from college, and you're not sure what you want to do. So everybody says to you, "Oh, you're smart. Why don't you go to law school?" Or, you know, "Why don't you go to business school? Why don't you get a master's degree of some kind?" Or what? And you kind of go, you haven't really defined your North Star. So why wouldn't you do those things? Okay. The
Yeah.
world will reward you most of the time for
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. Your family will probably, right? Your friends, clap for you, all the things. And You go, well, okay, I guess this is what I'm supposed to do. I don't hate it. Maybe I'll figure out something while I'm there, right? So it starts with asking yourself, are you doing things because you want to, or because
Mm-hmm.
people have told you you should, or because you're rewarded for doing that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, once you answer that question, another question, a set of questions you can ask yourself is, when I go to work and I show up and do the things in the environment in which I do them, do I like it? Do I like it? Do I like what I show up every day and do? Right? So when I was running HR, people would say, "Oh, I want a promotion and this that." I said, "Why? What does that mean to you?" "I want opportunity." Okay. What does that mean to you? Right? Because some people that means I want to be a manager. For some
Mm-hmm.
people, it means I want to give presentations, at global conferences. For some people, it means I want to travel more. For some people, it means I want to work on high profile projects. For some people, it means I need to have a mentor around this place, right? It can
Mm-hmm.
mean a lot of things. There's no one cookie cutter, excuse me, there's no one cookie cutter answer, but you need to figure it out for yourself. It's not, your North Star isn't a job, it's how you want to show up in the world. If there's something that you've dreamt of or that you used to do when you were younger and you kind of stopped, maybe it's something that you stopped because people around you said, "Oh, don't do that. You're too smart for that." Or it just felt crazy to turn down this other opportunity for this thing that every time you thought about it, you smiled. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's giving you an indication if you're moving towards something that you might begin to call your North Star or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because living our lives for someone else is not very meaningful, it's not very powerful. We are very powerful people. We need to take up space. We need
Mm-hmm.
to be honest with ourselves about what we need. And we are grown-ups. We need to advocate for ourselves. We don't do things just because people told us to, right? If you get nothing else from this discussion, I hope it's that you commit to making decisions wholly on your own, right? You need to be
Mm-hmm.
the leader of yourself, right? Some people don't do
Ooh.
that. Yeah. And part of the reason they don't do it is because, well, if I do what they say, then I'm not actually responsible for what happened, right? Um, and that's not coming from a place of power. And I would hope we would all want to come from a place of power as it relates to using that power to live the life you're meant to live, not any old
Mm-hmm.
life and any old job with benefits. Yeah, we want that. We want that. But that can't be all we want. It said differently, it could be all we want. But I think that would be sad because we
Mm-hmm.
could live a bigger life than that. And I think we all deserve that.
Yeah, I think so too. And you mentioned something earlier about like us feeling like we just have to accept anything that comes our way, which is something that I'm unlearning too, right? Just to be grateful for whatever like falls into your lap. Like
Yeah.
realizing that you can build a filter of the things that you allow in. And just like your journey that you shared, every job that you entered into after you defined your North Star met your requirements. So for people who may be feeling like, how do I even start? Like, where would be the first place to start to identify those key values and requirements that you have for your life to build that filter of things that come in?
Yeah, I think it starts with thinking about jobs you've had or experiences you've had in school or in some of the jobs you've had. Write it down and try to see if there's some consistency across these things, right? Because I always talk about it's about what you show up and do and what the environment is, right? Those are kind of like the two kind of things you want to interrogate. And that will sort of help you. Now, I have this framework, right? It's like, it's pretty simple, right? It's called the Navis Framework, right? Everybody loves an acronym. I love them too. Makes it easy to remember. But let me just run through it, and I hope this will help. So, first, let's get clear about what your aspirations are, right? So, I said before, I'm not talking about a job, right? I aspire to whatever, right? It's the bigger thought. How do you want to show up in this world? What do you want to have accomplished for yourself, right? So, an example of an aspiration could be, I want to be supportive of the improving the educational outcomes of people in my community. I want to be known for that. If I,
Mhm.
before I die, I want to be able to say, that's what I did for the people in my community, and I made a difference because I did that. Could be, I want to be an innovator. I want to push a specific piece of medicine forward that's going to change the lives of people who have certain types of disabilities. Now, in a North Star, you wouldn't say what the disabilities were. You wouldn't even say,
Mhm.
how are you going to innovate? I haven't said anything about a job yet. I'm just saying,
Mhm.
how do you want to show up in the world? Now, I shared with you just a few minutes ago, my goal, my aspiration is to inspire and support as many people as I can to identify their North Star so that they can have a life of meaning, right? That is my aspiration. So I encourage everybody to think about that and give yourself permission, an unconstrained view of what you want to show up in the world doing and being. And
Mhm.
P.S., no one can tell you what it is. No one can tell you,
Mm. Mhm.
right? Only
Mhm.
you in your quiet moments with your journal or in the bathtub or whatever the heck you're doing, right? Give some thought to what you actually aspire to be. Also, give some thought as to what your values are. Some people will put their values last because this is a good job, and maybe the people, maybe the what the organization is doing is a little shady. You know what I mean? But it's a good job,
Mhm.
it's fine. But if it's against your values, maybe that's why you have that pit in your stomach all the time. Maybe that's why you're embarrassed to tell people you even work there,
Ooh. Mhm.
right? There are some
Mhm.
people who are so focused on their values. It's so front and center that they want to do mission driven work. They want the values to lead what their aspirations are even about, right?
Mhm.
So that's a very, very important component of your North Star. And then here's one that's going to seem so basic: your interest. What are you actually interested in? It's
Mhm.
funny to me how many people, and I told you I ran HR, so you see all kinds of things. And I remember this one gentleman. He wasn't doing well. His manager came and said, he used to do well. I don't know what's going on. He's not doing well, and maybe you shouldn't work here and this and that. I said, pause. Let me meet this guy. So I met him. Seemed like a nice guy, and he's nervous. Everyone's scared of
Mhm.
HR, right? Everybody's
Yes.
scared of HR. But I was very nice. I really was trying to change the
Mhm.
paradigm. But we were chatting. We were chatting, and he used to do well. And I said, hey, what's kind of going on? And he couldn't really put his finger on. He didn't know. Okay.
Mhm.
And I said, what? Tell me about what's going on in your life. What you got going on? What's up? And he started telling me, and his whole energy was different. He started telling me about his wife and his children, and he talked
Mhm.
about the volunteer work that he was doing in the community that was related to his daughter, um, and what he was doing. And he just was glowing as he was saying that to me. And I said, well, that's really great. I'm so glad you found that, right? That's something that you really enjoy. And get back to work and do your best, right? So anyway, I said that, and about a month later, he came in with his resignation letter,
Oh wow. Mhm.
smiling. And I'm like, now look, I didn't always get mad when people resigned. I actually liked it when people resigned because it meant that they were taking a stand for themselves, right?
Mm.
Everybody doesn't
Mhm.
have to work everywhere,
That's
correct?
true. Mhm.
And I said this in my last YouTube video. I said, look, we're all in the process of doing a career transition, right? Unless you
Mhm.
plan to retire from where you work, it's not a question of if you're going to leave, it's when.
Mhm.
Right?
That's true.
So, not surprisingly, I said, well, what are you going to go do? And he got a job working with children in that organization where he was volunteering.
Wow.
I am 100% that he was making at least half the salary that he was making.
Mhm.
I have no
Mhm.
idea what his benefits were, but it didn't really matter because this is a gentleman who was following his North Star. And I'm sure that there are people in his life who said, "You're crazy. You got the degree and you got the experience to do this thing. You've been getting great reviews until recently. You know what I mean? You seem like a happy person, happy person.
Mhm.
Um, that wasn't it. He took a stand for himself and says, "This is what's going to make me happy." And
Mhm.
when somebody is living in their joy, we know it. We know those people in our lives who are doing that.
Mhm.
And we know the people who are not, right?
Mhm.
So,
That's true.
you have to do work that you are actually interested in. So, here's an example I like to give that I don't want to insult anybody, but why not try anyway? So, anyway, I would say if you find yourself a lawyer at
Mhm.
9:35 p.m. on the 65th floor of your building, and your light is the only light that is on, and you are working on a bankruptcy briefing, you might want to think about, am I interested in this? You know, and I say that, and I quickly say, some people are, okay? There are people who love that. They are in the zone that is their jam. They love it. So I don't want to say people don't. But if
Mhm.
you don't, and that's the work you're doing, you really
Wow.
need to
Mhm.
interrogate, right? So
Mhm.
your interests are important. Your superpowers are important too. So when I say superpowers, I mean your skills, your experiences, your way
Mhm.
of doing things. The people who are like, oh yeah, I go to Marissa for this because she just knows how to do it. I don't know how she knows how to do it, but this thing comes effortlessly to her, and she's our go-to.
Mhm.
Or it's the way you naturally go about things. And you just think, well, doesn't everybody else
Mhm.
do that? And the answer is no. They don't do it the way that you do it, right? So, what we all want and what can make us all feel really good is when we have the opportunity to use our superpowers. We love our
Mhm.
superpowers. When you use your superpower, it's it's one of those things where you're in flow. People talk about being in flow, right? You're doing
Mm.
it and time is passing. You don't even realize time is passing just because you love doing that thing, right? Why wouldn't you want a job and a career that enabled you to leverage your superpowers, that was about your superpowers, that respected your superpowers, right?
Right.
Opposite. Why would you take a job that doesn't require you to use them at all? I would say when I shared the experience before, I think that was the primary there. This job did not require me to use any of my superpowers. So I was very
Mhm.
uncomfortable because the things that are not your superpowers are somebody else's superpowers. So the harder you work at this thing that is very low down in level in terms of your ability, um, you can keep working at it, but it's somebody else's superpower. So you're working at it to become what? Mediocre? And
Mm.
as you're putting this
Mhm.
energy into becoming mediocre in this thing that you don't like and you're not good at, you're not actually using your superpowers because there's only so many hours in a day, right? So leveraging your superpowers in some way in your job, in your career, is something that requires serious consideration. I said before, what do you forget about the name of the job? What do you show up and do? And is what you show up and do related to your skills, your strengths, your experiences, and your natural way of doing things that you love? Right. And then, of
Mhm.
course, there are your needs. Like we have to live, right? We need a check, we need benefits, and we need all these things. But we also have to be clear about, well, what are our needs? Like, what is the level of our needs, right? Like, are you a person that feels like they need the latest model, European car, and you need to live blinged out, and you need to, have the biggest car and the biggest house, but is that a need you have, or is that something that sounds cool and feels stupid to say no to? Or is your
Mm-hmm.
real need, to just live a pretty chill life where you can afford the things to do, you can afford to do the things you care about and have the things you care about, and you actually have the time to be the kind of mom you want to be, because
Mm-hmm.
you're not making this trade-off for the dollars,
Right.
where you can intentionally say, what kind of mom do I want to be? Do I want to be able to go to soccer practice? Okay. So what does that mean in terms of the other parts? Like, if that's my biggest need, maybe it's not true for everybody, but if it's true for you, you know, how do I
Mm-hmm.
recalibrate everything? What are my needs in terms of my workplace? Like, some people want to have fun in their workplace. They want to have their friends in their workplace. They want to hang out. That's what they like. They really need that. And if they don't have it, they feel they're not happy. They'll say, "Oh, I don't like my job. Oh, it's okay," because they need that. There are some people who are like, "It's 5:05. I have been working 5 minutes longer than I should have, and it's time for me to go home." And they want a
Yeah.
job that is consistent with that, right? They
Mm-hmm.
don't want a job that requires you to work at 9, but then you leave at 5, and your boss is wondering, how come you didn't stay the extra 4? Because the extra 4 were not actually extra. They were actually
Mm-hmm.
part of the job, right? And so now you've got this built-in tension, and you have to say, well, you know, why did I take a job like that? You know what I mean? It's not consistent with how I want to show up for my family. It's not
Mm-hmm.
consistent with the aspiration that I have for myself in terms of how I want to show up in the world and what I want to be proud of doing,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, taken together, your needs, your aspirations, your values, your interests, your superpowers, those are the set of requirements that are going to be your guiding light, so that it becomes very, very easy to disqualify certain jobs and certain careers, because some of them are not at all consistent with your North Star. And you have to be, right? Said something there.
Yeah,
And,
you did.
and you need to feel convicted enough to stand up for that. Because people will say, "Are you insane? That job has X, Y, and Z." And you can smile and say, "Uh-huh." And also, it's not for me.
Mm.
It's not
Mm-hmm.
for me. It doesn't matter that I've got 20 skills. So here are the people that are stuck that I work with, right? They're stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because they have, a lot of them are overachievers, you use that word. And so they have a lot of skills. They've done this, they've done that, they got this award, they this. So they can do everything. And a lot of jobs will require some set of all the things they know how to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, the universe of things that they apply for is huge. They don't disqualify anything, because they could potentially do any of these things if they were just basing it on skills and experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those people can be very confused and very frustrated and feel very stuck and feel like they're spinning. These are the people who apply for everything, right? And there's no relationship between this thing they applied for and this other thing. In PS, as a person who ran HR, when you interview these people, you can tell. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
why are you even doing it? Like, sometimes they can't hide it. Their resume has nothing to do with the job we are even discussing. Sometimes. And you kind of go, do you know what you want? And a lot of times they don't. They really
Mm-hmm.
don't. There have been times,
Mm-hmm.
where I've had to fire people, right? Not
Mhm.
because, they broke a rule in the handbook, but they weren't good at what they did and also didn't like it.
And
When you're
also
not.
didn't like it. Mhm.
Yes, and so I didn't like my job, so I was stressed out and I was working harder, but then I was nervous, and then what happens when you're nervous? You make mistakes, and then the
Mhm.
people around me didn't want me to succeed because they resented me, a Black woman doing so
Mhm.
well, right? And
Mhm.
it's not a good situation in which to find yourself. So it's really worth it to think about what you aspire to be, not the job, what you aspire to be and what you want to be known for, and what you want to look back on and say, I'm proud of this thing that I did, what your
Mhm.
values are and living to them, what your
Right.
interests really are, what your superpowers really are, and what your real needs personally and professionally are. Once you've
Mm.
gotten clear on those requirements for yourself, that's your
Right.
North Star and it's there. And you must ask yourself, as you're making decisions about your job and your career, are they consistent with that North Star?
Mhm.
Are they on my way to that?
Right.
Because if they're not, what are you doing? Right? Like, if you're not doing things that are consistent with where you aspire to be, right? Like, what is that?
Mhm.
What is that about?
Mhm.
Now, temporarily, it might be something you have to do, all right? Sometimes you have a difficulty finding a job, or there may be personal reasons why you might have to make a choice about a career that isn't really on the direct path to your North Star. But life is complicated. Sometimes you
Mhm.
have to pivot and you have to go diagonally or something, make a right turn. But at least when you know what your North Star is, you know when you are making that choice. You know
Mhm.
when you're making the choice, and you're making it intentionally with your eyes wide open, right? The North Star is telling you where ultimately you want to be. There can be multiple paths to it, but if
Mhm.
you don't have a North Star, you're just walking anywhere.
Ooh. Mhm.
Interesting point. The North Star is actually not the brightest star in the sky. Some people
Mm.
think it is. It's not, but it's important for navigation. It's the most important one for navigation,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes, if we don't know our North Star, we are following bright stars. Oh, this is hot. This is the new thing. Yeah, you should do that. Oh, yeah, yes. And you're chasing all these stars. And then you look back and you say, what did this all add up to? I just did a bunch of stuff, but it
Mhm.
didn't, it's not hanging together. And there were certain aspects of the things you liked, certain of these things, people were like, wow, that's pretty cool that you're doing that. You get cool points. You can get points from your auntie, right? Because they're proud to be able to tell the people at church that you do this thing, right? Um, but that's not a reason to make a career or job decision. It should be your
Mm.
auntie, I love
Mhm.
you. And also, I am not doing what you're talking about. And because you love me, you're going to get over that.
So important. Yeah, and just like the feeling that we can disqualify things. That's something I'm having to learn. In reflecting, I think it's like growing up, being the first generation in my family to not experience poverty. The message of survival was often like drilled into me. Just go into a career field where you'll be set, which is why I entered into finance and some other reasons too.
Mhm.
But like realizing that it's not aligned with who I am. And so I would find myself running into these toxic situations over and over again, right? Doing work that really didn't fulfill me. And so, how do you get to the point of learning that you have the power to disqualify things that come your way when you have a background like that?
Yeah, that can be rough. And that's why it's so important. I mean, look, you can make a change at any point in your life. It's never too late. However, it's really helpful when you do it at the beginning because you don't have the golden handcuffs, right?
Oh, yes.
Of
Yes.
being that bankruptcy lawyer for 30 years and being amazing at it, and now your partner. And now what?
Mm.
And it's not
Mhm.
your North Star. You have to give up a lot now. And then
Mhm.
there's even more pressure, and people think you're even crazier than they maybe thought before, you
Right.
know?
Mhm.
So I think it starts with making a decision and a commitment to yourself that you are going to play a bigger game for yourself and take the time to understand who you aspire to be and how you want to show up in this world. Think about
Mm.
it.
Mhm.
And you ask yourself if what you are doing is in any way consistent with that, and grapple with that.
Mhm.
That's a place to start.
Mhm.
And if you look at an individual job, like forget about the title, read the JD, read the description. What do you, because what really matters is what do you have to show up and do? Are you interested in that? Is it aligned with your values? Are you using your superpowers in that job? Is that what's called
Mhm.
for? You know, is it going to meet your needs other than it pays a ton of money?
Mhm.
Right? Because if you're checking no to everything I'm saying, then you disqualify that. Don't
Wow.
even start considering it because now you're doing your North Star all over again. No, just do the North Star work first, and then it becomes a tool that you can use to disqualify things because they're not worthy of you and the person that you want to be.
Mm. Mhm.
And then that reveals the universe of things that are going to be well suited for you. And you'll know it because you'll smile because you see yourself in it. You'll see yourself in it.
Mm.
And others will
Mhm.
see it in you too.
Mm. I love that. And I guess I had a question just about trust, right? Because a lot of this, like the messaging that we get is very like fear based. You have to like do this or else this is going to happen X, Y, and Z. You have to like commit to something that's not aligned with you because there's fear of the future. So how do we begin to like tap into trust of what's to come? Even if we say no to something that's not aligned, something better will come our way.
Life is long and
Mm.
we are all learning as we go. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we're all learning as we go. We're going to stub our toes and we're going to trip and hurt our knees. And that's going to happen anyway, right? It's a trap to feel like, well, it only happens when it only happens when I don't do what everyone said, right? We don't, somehow we discount all the mistakes and regrets we have because we did the thing everyone wanted us to do. We're just like, oh, but that's just part of doing the thing. But when we do what we want to do, all we do is focus on the things that went wrong, right?
That's true. Mm-hmm.
Right. I think being in the mindset of learning and being having that, people talk so much about it, but it's true. Having a growth mindset and really being willing to be vulnerable.
Right.
There are some clients I work with, and we work through this piece, and they struggle when I ask them questions, and they say, Alicia, I just feel really vulnerable answering this, because there's almost like a fear
Mm-hmm.
to to express what they care about. Like they almost feel like they don't have permission.
Mm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, wow, like think about how deep that is,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't feel you have permission to tell yourself what your values are, what you aspire to be. That's interesting, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because that kind of says, how am I living my life? Am I living my life for others or am I living my life for myself? And it's not that you don't care about others and it's not they don't care about you. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you're making assumptions. Like, for example, this, I don't know why I'm beating up on lawyers or something, but, some people, they go to law school, and everybody's clapping. Oh my God, I'm so glad Elisa's going to law school. I'm so proud of this, that, and the third. But really, my passion is music.
Mm-hmm.
And I played the piano, and everybody knows I did recitals. Everybody knows that. I didn't do it. I went to law school. And 10 years later, I'm out here doing well in law on the 64th floor that I was speaking of before. And then you go to a family reunion and you bust out with, God, I really want to do music. And they said,
Mm-hmm.
I always wondered why you didn't do that. But, you said you wanted to go to law school. So I was supportive of that. But I really always wondered why you didn't pursue that. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes we can make some assumptions of what
Yeah.
we think people want. Sometimes they really, really do want to support what we want. But we get
Mm-hmm.
so fearful and so in search of validation that we don't give ourselves permission to even assert what we want and what we actually need apart from their
Mm-hmm.
approval,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So that's the work, you know it's so funny. My daughter would be like, oh, this is hard. I said, it's a good thing you know how to do hard things, right? And what's more important than this? this is
Mm-hmm.
this is your life. This
This
is
is
your
your
life.
life. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you
Mm-hmm.
deserve to have the one that you want. And you certainly should be fighting for it, because if you're not fighting for it, who is?
Wow.
With love.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's powerful. If you're not fighting for it, who is? Hmm. And so, how do we begin to, if we're in that space of feeling like we don't even have permission, like you said, to be honest with ourselves? How do we even get to that point of before we start journaling values and everything like that? If we have that mental block to where we can't even get to that point, what are some like pieces of advice or words of wisdom that you have for people to get to that point of identifying their values if they're stuck at that place of not feeling like they have permission to?
You're right. Well, I think that there are two commitments that it's important for all of us to make as grown-ups who are thinking about what to do, in general, but also as it relates to the job. I think it's important to commit to doing things not just because you can,
Mm-hmm.
but doing things that are about who you're about. I said before, we
Mm-hmm.
can do a lot of things, but that doesn't mean we should, right? So, especially those high achievers among us,
Yes.
we will just sit there and be like, I have to do this, 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 this. If that was the case, Marissa, I'd be out here. I'd be an economist living in Venezuela, running HR, doing just trying to pack every
Mm-hmm.
single skill and experience I have in one thing. You know what I mean? And that's crazy making. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I
Mm-hmm.
think that we need to be willing to, maybe I'll use the word curate. We have to
Mm.
commit to curating the skills
Wow.
that we are going to use and how we show up. And then we have to commit, and this can be hard because life doesn't necessarily reward this, but we have to be willing to make decisions that are wholly our own, even if
Mm.
the world doesn't reward us for it. People mock us for it. People tell us we're crazy. You should even write that down. Here are all the horrible things that could happen if I pick something that people do not approve of. Write it down.
Mm.
Write them all
Mm-hmm.
down, because you may be living a life where people may very well say those things. So might as well get used to practice hearing those things so that you can be steadfast and remind yourself, look, I'm doing this for me. Also,
Mm.
we live in the world, and particularly in the United States, where pivoting is not really frowned upon. It used to be back in the day,
Mm-hmm.
but now it's not. It's very easy, I think, and I ran HR, right? So I interviewed people all the time. It's it can As long as you can tell the story of why you made the decisions you did, people respect that. Some people
Mm.
may look at my career trajectory and say, but Alicia, you said that, but you did this, 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 this. Yes, but there was a through line there. And if you knew what it was, and I would tell you because that's the job in an interview, you would understand why I was following the North Star in everything that I did.
Mm.
And I've been happy in everything that I did. And I told you that when I came back and I articulated my North Star, I exactly got the job that was at North Star. There was also an example where I was at a conference and we were meant to, it was small, it was like top talent and brought everybody, it's like 50 of us or something like this. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to meet all 49 people, right? You mingle, you do the exercises and have dinner, but you don't meet everybody, right? So there's a point
Mhm.
where you need to introduce yourself, right? My name is Alicia and I work in this such and such. And I was like, I could say that. I mean, I probably did. I mean, you have to say who you are, right? I probably did say that. But
Mhm.
I mostly spoke about my North Star. Again, I wasn't calling it that, but I basically described what I was about. I mean, I didn't go
Mhm.
on and on. Like, I was not that irritating person who just went on and on, right? We know that person, right? I'm not suggesting that you do that, but
Mhm.
I did share some highlights. Here's what I love to do, and this is my vision for myself. Or whatever. Yeah, anyway, it wasn't as corny as I'm making it sound right now. It was appropriate what I said. So a couple of weeks after that conference, I received
Mhm.
an email. It was a one sentence email from somebody I did not know, and it said, "What do you think about joining our team?" And I'm like, I don't know who you are. I don't know what this team is. I don't know what you're talking about. Right? So what it turned out was there was a small team being formed in the company. Not that many
Mhm.
people knew about it. And turns out they were staffing that team with people who had my North Star.
Oh, wow.
That job was in consulting. If it was posted, which it was not, I never
Mhm.
would have applied for it. Why? I've never been a consultant. Why would I apply for a consulting job? Right. And I wouldn't
Mm.
think I would get it. And because I would look at the job description and I would say, well, I haven't literally done those things. But when you
Right.
think about my North Star and how I show up and my superpowers, oh, absolutely crush all of those things. It was one of the best jobs I ever had in my life. That never would have happened if I hadn't done the work to define my North Star and if I hadn't communicated. Give the universe an opportunity to conspire to give you exactly what you want.
Oh, wow. Alicia. Wow.
Because no one's out here reading your mind. And sometimes what you want is very easy to get. So I remember I said that time, like, opportunity can mean a lot of things to different people. And, you see one employee and they're kind of disgruntled, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, what's wrong? Like, I never get to travel. But I'm like,
Mhm.
Michelle, nobody knew you wanted to travel, you know? And so then you put her in a project and they get to travel. Okay, now she's traveling. Good. But like you're sitting here stewing that you don't get such and such because you're making assumptions of how they decide who gets to do such and such. Sometimes it's just people in the room saying, okay, we have this project. Who's going to do what? Okay, let's just, that person do that, that. None of them ever told me what they wanted to do. So let's just put them where I think they should go.
Mhm.
Now, if you said, I want to travel and that's important to me, everybody in that room would be like, oh no, Michelle wants to travel. Now there's traveling. Let's put Michelle over there. Okay, we'll do it. It can
Mhm.
be. I've been in these rooms, and I say to myself, it's the people who expressed a preference and really telling you a slice of what their North Star was. Those are the ones I respected the most. Those are the ones that I
Mhm.
thought would be future leaders. Those are the ones I thought were self-aware. Those are the ones that everyone around the table could see themselves in because they were clear about what their North Stars were. So when I say it's powerful, do the work to figure out what your North Star is and then tell everybody so that you actually have a fighting chance of getting what you want and not putting energy into and making big and sometimes extremely expensive mistakes going in the exact opposite direction of the North Star that you have not taken the time to define.
Wow.
It's life changing. It's why I love to do
Mhm.
this work, because you see the transformation in a person when they
Mhm.
start to say, you know what, I do value myself. I don't know how, like you're saying, how do you go about it? And I'm sort of giving morsels of how to do it, but once you do the work and you're honest with yourself, and you get stronger and less fearful, because you now realize you're fighting for yourself. Fight for yourself the way you'd fight for your children.
Mm.
Fight for yourself the way you'd fight for your mother. You should love
Mhm.
yourself at least as much as you love those two people.
Mhm.
And if you're not doing that, you have to ask yourself
Mm.
why.
You do. You really
And,
do. Yeah.
and people you mentor, people who are
Mhm.
looking at you, they will see you and how you move, and it will give them the confidence to move in ways that are consistent with who they are too, because now you're a role model and you didn't even know it. Some people will expressly tell you, some people will never tell you, but it still be true.
Mm.
So it'll be transformational, not just for you, but for the people
Right.
around you. And that's amazing.
It is. And it kind of creates like that kinetic energy when you're really like living in alignment with why you're here. Your natural gifts and talents, it's like that sparks flames within other people to
Yeah.
pursue their what's aligned with them. Yes.
I've seen
Mhm.
too many people describe themselves as stuck, you know, as confused,
Mhm.
as not knowing where they want to go, but certainly knowing they want to leave where they are.
Mhm.
And sometimes they should leave where they are. I mean, if you're in a toxic situation that is unhealthy, you should leave for sure.
Mhm.
But don't let that toxicity and that environment be the reason why you don't take the time to figure out what your North Star is. Because it's possible that that place wasn't toxic and it was supportive of you, and it's still not the right place for you.
Mhm.
But you don't get to know that because you're so focused on how am I going to survive or how am I going to get out of here, that you're like out here looking at all the job posts and applying for this and this and this, and just trying to get the whoever says yes quickest, that's where you're going kind of thing.
Mhm.
you know and sometimes you have to do that, right? Sometimes life is lifing and you have to do that,
Mhm.
but that does
Mhm.
not absolve you of the responsibility of identifying the career that makes sense for you, because that is your actual responsibility. And the question becomes, are you going to embrace that responsibility, or are you going to abdicate that responsibility?
Mm. Are you gonna embrace that responsibility or abdicate it? Ooh,
Just saying.
that question right there. Ooh.
Yeah.
And I know that we're getting close to time. I want to be respectful of your time, but I do want to ask you about your YouTube channel for those who
Oh,
may not
right.
know.
So, I have been talking about this North Star thing for so long that now I've become the North Star lady. So I've embraced it. So my YouTube channel is called I Am the North Star Lady. There, how about that? So that's easy. And it's, find your North Star, because I absolutely believe in it. And I use that as a platform to talk to people about this so that they can understand it and make a decision or not to 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 have a transformation in their lives. So that's why I did it. I do keynote speaking too, and I love that because you can inspire a whole room, right? But you get the
Mhm.
world if you do it on YouTube. Right? So I so I do it one on one. I do it in rooms, and I do it now on YouTube as well, and it's been very fulfilling. I've been meeting a lot of very interesting people hitting me up in the DMs. I hope you guys hit me up in the DMs, because As you can tell, I really believe in this, and I think it can be an extremely powerful tool for decision making, and particularly in your job.
Yes. Yes. And I do want to talk a little bit about the upcoming masterclass that we have. Alicia will be our guest speaker. I'll be co hosting part two of a two-part workshop, How to Heal from a Toxic Job. And this will walk you through how to heal from the emotional wounds of a toxic job, rebuild your self confidence, your self worth, begin to trust yourself again, also reclaim your identity and step into a healthier, more fulfilling version of you. And then cultivating those new relationships after you leave a toxic environment, because sometimes often that trauma can carry through to new environments. So how do you heal from that to embrace what awaits you? So yes, I'll link that in the chat if y'all want to register for this. This is October 27th at 5 p.m. 7 p.m. Eastern. If you'd like to register, it's also in the description section. But yeah, anything you'd like to share around your guest speaker spot at the masterclass, what you'll be
Oh,
sharing?
well, I am very much looking forward to that because toxicity is something that none of us should tolerate. But as I was saying before, it can't be an excuse to not explore who we are, right? We have to do both. We have to keep ourselves safe and we have to move towards safety and fulfillment as well. We have to do both, right? So that is what I'm going to be talking about. So there's healing, and then there's places where you go and things you do so that you can remain well after you've healed, right? So there needs to be a way to sustain, the way to sustain, and that's very important. So I'm looking forward to being part of that. I do one-on-one coaching, um, and it's funny. I keep onboarding people and say, "Oh, this is amazing," right? So if you're interested in that, you can find that out on my YouTube channel. I've got links, and I know you said you put the links. Um, but it's a lot of people. So right now, I think what's going to happen is I'm going to create a group coaching program. So if you want to get on the wait list for that, you know, um, find my information and then tell me, put me on the wait list, and we'll go ahead and put you on the wait list because I want to make sure as many people as possible have the ability to go deep. And sometimes you need to do it in a group. Sometimes you need accountability. Sometimes you need to watch somebody else work it out so that
Mm-hmm.
it's easier for you to work it out, right? That's very important. So
Mm-hmm.
those are the things that, as part of my North Star, that I'm offering to the world. And you know, if I can be supportive of your journey, all I want to do is see you win. But even if I'm not part of it, I want to see you win anyway. Go about the
Mm-hmm.
business of figuring
Mm-hmm.
out the North Star and get going. It's really, really worth it. And you deserve it.
Yes. And you deserve it.
Oh,
Yeah.
there's one other thing that I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to, because you had asked me, how are people going to know? So I have this quiz. It's called the Career Fulfillment Quiz. It's like 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's free. So you just fill out the quiz, and it will tell you. And I told you about the needs, the aspirations, etc. Right? So you'll answer a few questions, and it will tell you exactly what area of your North Star is not getting met in the job that you're in,
Oh.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So that you can figure out where specifically you need to do some work, or what your requirements are for that next step that you want to take. So that's just a free resource for you to kind of get you started if you're kind of sitting there with a pen and a journal and not sure what to do.
I love it. Thank you. And I see Winsome. Hello, Winsome. So she just booked her discovery call.
Oh, excellent. What is her name? I didn't catch it.
Winsome. Mm-hmm. Winsome.
Winsome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Be sure to put in there how how we met virtually. So I can say, hey,
I'm
Marissa, guess who I spoke to?
a bunch of folks subscribed to your channel. Yes.
Oh.
And I saw Marissa said it was a TEDx talk. And that's what it felt like. So thank you.
TEDx talk. Well, that's the keynote speaking part of me. Um,
Mhm.
so that's funny because I get in front of those audience and that is fun. I wish I could see you guys' faces. I see a little bit of the
Mhm.
chat. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't really see what the chat is saying. Maybe later I can read what the chat is saying. But I really love doing this in rooms, and I really get even more personal about the story that I shared, and I think it triggers something in people because tears go here.
Mhm.
They really do. It's deep.
Yeah. It
This is not
is.
a trivial exercise I'm talking about, not by any stretch of the imagination.
It's not.
When,
Not.
yeah, but it can be. Look, don't be one of these people who's buying all the books and with your highlighter and the book on the shelf that's got dust because you forgot about it. You just got excited when you're in Barnes and Noble, and now we're out here watching all these YouTube videos and you're not making any progress. You're just
Mhm.
busy, but you're not making any progress, right? So, just FYI. So, in my program, it's less than 60 days, and we together will define your North Star, okay? Because
Mm.
in case you
Mhm.
haven't figured it out, I'm about doing real things. And you guys are on this live. So, I'm going to assume that most of you are about doing real things too. So, if you are, let's work, get it done. And if I run out of spots, please tell me that you want to do it because, like I said, I do think it's going to make sense. I think there's a movement, Marissa. There's a movement going around this.
Mhm.
People want
Yeah,
to,
I feel it too. Mhm.
yeah. Self care can't just be a mani pedi. That's
Mhm.
not. I mean, get it, right? Like, get it. But it's
Mhm.
it's not. It's very. That's a very narrow way of thinking about it, and we deserve to be a little bit more serious
Mhm.
than that when it comes to how we are living our lives. And we spend most of our lives at work.
That's true. That is very true. There is a question I want to get to before we end the live tonight. Nia says, I'm just joining. Let's see. Not everyone has natural supports, or no one in your support system has been where you are heading. What advice do you have for them if you don't have a support system trying to define your North Star?
Ah, that's interesting. Support system.
Mm.
Now, support system, there's support system capital S, and then there's support system lowercase s, lowercase s. I suggest the lowercase s's, right? If there are people that you can go to who you can talk and they will listen, that's not nothing. Sometimes you just need to be able to say the things and even tell the person, I don't want to hear anything back. I just want to say
Mm.
the things.
Mhm.
And then there are people, they may have, everybody has that cousin who has, they have very strong opinions about things, right? But, have a conversation with them and say, look, imagine a scenario where we're not focused on what you just think I should do, even though thank you very much for your opinion. But I am interested in this other thing. How does that land with you? Because they may be more supportive than you think. And I also don't think you should, if you're religious, I think it makes sense to look to your church community, right? I think people will help who's in your family and
Mhm.
friends. And then sometimes here's a something you might try. If you think about your North Star, there may be a way to get involved in your North Star in your personal life outside of work to do things
Mm.
that are closer. So now you're creating, you're finding your people. You're finding your
Mhm.
people who have
Mhm.
aspirations similar to yours or who have values similar to yours. And then what you want to do seems less crazy. And now
That
you've got a
part, yes. Mhm.
and now you have a population of people will help who want to help you because they may have been where you were and they're here now, and they can
Mhm.
see your journey, and now all the goodness is happening because you can learn from what they did, and they can be an accountability buddy or source of inspiration for what you ultimately want to do, because sometimes we
Mhm.
can't directly get there, sometimes we have to get there diagonally. And but as it relates to a support system, it's all about finding people, finding your people, leverage who you have. Everyone can't help you with everything. Figure
Mhm.
out what the people in your life can help you with. That's not going to make you crazy or set you backwards, right? See what you can take as it relates to you defining your North Star that would be helpful, not hurtful. And
Mhm.
then try to find spaces where there are people who are doing things that are North Star ish, um, and see if you can find your people there who will help
Mhm.
you up and
Mhm.
show you possibilities that you hadn't even thought about.
That's so true. Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like the internet has been the place for a lot of us to connect with other people who are on the same path. Because when you're liberation focused, and sometimes it's just you or like maybe someone else, but to be able to connect to like a huge community that's on this same wavelength of finding your North Star, right? Of getting free of toxic environments, that does a lot to have that support on your journey. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you need to pay for the support, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I know you're an MSW, so sometimes this can bring up a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
when I work with
Mm-hmm.
clients, I ask them to go back and we talk about some stuff that went down in elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so,
Yep.
because sometimes, now because I'm a therapist, I am not, God bless. That is not, that is not my expertise in area. However, we do it because sometimes we see ourselves repeating the same things over and over and over again. And that can
Mm-hmm.
bring up some
Mm-hmm.
stuff, you know what I
Yep.
mean? That really needs to be dealt with and really needs to be grappled with. And in that case, it really does make sense to seek out professional support. And I'm so glad that we're living in a time where there's so little or lot less stigma associated with getting the resources, the professional, resources that you need in that regard. That certainly was not true when I nearly had my nervous breakdown. I should have
Mm-hmm.
called HR weeks before I did, but
Mm-hmm.
the stigma of it was too much, so I didn't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, Alicia, thank you so much for being a guest and sharing so much. Like I said, I have to go back and watch this because you dropped so many gems and words of wisdom. So we appreciate you. Before we go, I want to ask how people can continue to follow your journey. I know you mentioned your YouTube channel. If there are
Yeah.
any other places that people can find you, and then any parting words you'd like to share as we wind down for the night.
So YouTube channel, I do have links on the YouTube channel to email me. I have a website. Eh, we're not living in a website world. Socials. Um, and then you can also connect with me on LinkedIn, but say, where we met, because again, I'm getting spammed like crazy on LinkedIn, and I want to connect with you guys. I want to connect with y'all.
Mhm.
So please tell me, because I post a lot on LinkedIn as well and share my thoughts, because as I said, I'm a proselytizer for this North Star and the power that it has. So please follow me in those ways. YouTube links, email me, and LinkedIn. Please connect with me.
Love it. Yes, and I have all your links in the description section. I put your LinkedIn link here. But yeah, any parting words you like to share with the audience as we wind
I
down?
well, let me tell you something. I bravo to all of you for showing up, because there's something in the title. You
Mm-hmm.
saw the word North Star and you decided to show up for yourself, not even quite knowing what it meant.
Mm-hmm.
So, kudos to you for being willing to not just take the spark, but try to understand what that spark was about. And if you're
Mm.
still on, taking the time to listen to what it really, really was about. And hopefully afterwards to consider what it can mean for you and what you can actively do to live a life of fulfillment, meaning, and joy because you can. So, bravo to you for showing up for yourself and leave and go figure out what your North Star is.
I love it. I love it. And I think those words that you said, because you can, right? Because, like you said, like it's your life. This is your life that's at stake. If you don't know your values or what you're going towards, you're just kind of like accepting anything that comes your way. Like, this is serious, right? As far as we
Yeah,
know, we only get like one shot at this thing.
that's right. You're talking to a double cancer survivor, okay? So,
Mm-hmm.
and I came up with the North Star prior to that. But I'm just saying that
Yeah.
we're only here one time. And you don't, my,
Mm-hmm.
my mother used to say, not everybody who thought they were going to wake up today woke up, which
Mm-hmm.
I think is a very
Mm-hmm.
powerful thing. And I recite it all the time because it keeps me centered. But I do think that we need to be a stand for ourselves. That whole thing of, put your oxygen mask on first. I think so many people, they use being in service to others as an excuse to not work on themselves. They're out here being martyrs. Don't be a
Mm-hmm.
martyr. You're helping everybody else and you're in the ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to, you deserve it. You're worth it. You can put yourself first. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a better person, a happier person who has more to give. So
Mm-hmm.
it's actually less selfish. Reframe,
Mm-hmm.
reframe. Do not let yourself find an excuse for not doing this work.
I love that. I love that. Yes. Well, on that note, y'all, I want to thank y'all for being in the chat, everything that you've shared with us tonight. Thank you for being here. As always, if you're watching the replay, let us know in the comments what resonated. Because so many things. I got to go back, Alicia. Oh my gosh.
Ah,
Thank you.
well, you know where to find me.
Thank you. Yes. And I see a comment here from Winsome. Yes, sometimes you have to pay for the support if you want it enough. That is very true. Yeah, coaching, therapy to support you along this journey because it's not easy all the time. A lot of times it is going back to like 5, 6, 7 years old, things that happened that we're carrying into these experiences as adults and just working through that to break the pattern that we've been recreating. I think that's a really good point. Yeah.
Right. And sometimes it's
Mm-hmm.
a therapeutic solution like that. Sometimes it's a
Mm-hmm.
solution of somebody like me, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's an investment in yourself.
Yeah.
Either way, because you don't need to sit and upset and, oh, you deserve better than that. Find the thing
Mm-hmm.
that's going to get you what you need fastest,
Yes.
whatever that's going
Yeah.
to take and mean for you.
Yeah. That's so true. Yes. Okay, y'all. Thank you again, Alicia, for being here.
Thanks
Please
for
subscribe to
inviting me.
Alicia's channel. Yeah, of course. And please register for upcoming masterclass. I'll be co-hosting with Dr. Kamani, How to Heal from a Toxic Job, October 27th from 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern. Alicia will be a guest speaker along with Angela Kanu, who is a fellow social worker. She'll be talking about healing from the trauma of a toxic job. So yes, please register. And I hope y'all have a great night. Until next time, I'll be live with Samira on Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll be talking about financial independence for Black women, the importance of that. So until then, y'all, bye. Thank you for joining.